Hello, everyone. Welcome to the No Good Podcast, where we are joined by Jerad Marantz, who is an award-winning concept artist, a creature designer for legitimately some of your favorite superhero movies. I'm getting excited just thinking about the amount of questions I have. Jerad, first and foremost, how are you doing? I heard you just became a father. Congratulations. I hope fatherhood is treating you well.
Oh yeah, for the second time.
Second time. Congratulations twice then.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's wonderful. Second kid is a little different because you know what to expect. So that's actually better. But yeah, it's really really good. Just makes juggling multiple jobs difficult, and you really have to have a strong support system there in order to just get the job done.
Yeah, I could imagine for sure. I mean, the only thing I can do is imagine because I do not have any kids. So, but no, we do thank you for coming on to the podcast, man. For the people at home listening, I'm just going to do a grocery list of some of the movies, just some, because there's way too many. Some of the movies that you've got a chance to work on and TV shows. Black Panther, Doctor Strange, I Am Legend, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Spider-Man Far From Home, Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Shazam, Deadpool 2, Batman vs. Superman, Westworld, X-Men First Class, I've mentioned Infinity War twice, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Civil War, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Justice League, Thor, Percy Jackson, Planet of the Apes, Green Lantern. Wow. Did I mention? I've gone through half of the list at this point. But it's an incredible amount of work, man. And I truly want to thank you because you've contributed to a lot of my childhood and adulthood. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And
you to say.
Yeah. Hey, give people their flowers, man. Give people their flowers. But let's dive into some questions. You've had a chance to work on a ton of the projects, and I just mentioned a couple of them. But which one is the one that you look back on personally the most fondly?
There are a lot, actually. I've been very fortunate. I've noticed that as my career has kind of climbed, the projects get a little bit more fun because there tends to be a bit less drama. So when you're working on bigger projects and you're dropped in the middle of a room with artists that are at the very least just as good as me, then it's like hanging out with your friends all day, because even if you haven't worked with them before, you know that that person had to have a similar life, a similar and you have a lot in common with these people. So every time I jump on a new project or I'm with new artists, they end up becoming added to the collection of lifelong friends. So it's very fortunate. If I were to say in particular project, there are a couple of projects. It's very hard for anything to stand out, but Infinity War, Endgame, Justice League, and Batman versus Superman. Nice. I can't imagine movies coming down the line that would excite me as much as those films excited me working on them.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, speaking of that, in terms of superhero, comic book genre, you've played both sides, DC and Marvel. Is it different when you're in the costume design, creature design department, and makeup? Do you notice any difference working for one rather than the other?
Yeah, it really depends. Well, I mean, to touch on the DC Marvel thing, that there are two companies that work very differently. Like Marvel is very structured. So every time I jump on a Marvel film, I actually go in-house at Marvel Visual Development. It's a handful of insanely talented artists that have been on all the films. And they've recruited some new talent recently, some amazing talent recently. And so really, I'm just working with the same crew over and over again when I'm at Marvel, which is wonderful because Marvel has this continuity to it. All the films relate, and there's this single storyline that everything has to follow. And then when I'm at Warner Brothers, it's very different. At Warner Brothers, I'm usually working with a costume designer, and I'm doing concept art for them and the director. So it's a similar job, but it's a bit different because at Marvel, it's literally just me and a little bit of direction from one of the department heads, either Ryan Meyer, Andy Park, or my buddy Ian Joyner. So, you know, you're just really left alone and you're in front of your computer and you're just like shoveling off JPEGs. Whereas at Warner Brothers, I'm working more closely with the costume designer and director. So they all have their pluses and minuses. I would say that Warner Brothers is very different also because it's a bit of a revolving door. So, you know, just because I've worked on a ton of films with Warner Brothers, it doesn't mean necessarily that when they crew up for a new project, those people even know who I am. So oftentimes I do get called back from Warner Brothers, but it's really funny because it's based entirely on my portfolio and reputation. Most of the time they don't actually know that, oh, you worked on all of these other films.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're always starting from scratch, basically, at Warner Brothers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I think I forgot what the question was halfway through it.
You know, I'm sure with both sides, there's this element of secrecy when you're working on superhero movies, especially with movies like you mentioned, like Batman versus Superman, Endgame, Infinity War, right? There's just this level of kind of trying to keep everything confidential. And especially with Infinity War and Endgame, we know the results of those movies now, but how much did you guys, when you were creating the characters or you were working on the costumes and the makeup design, right? Mm-hmm. How much did you guys know going into it?
Oh, wow. Well, sometimes I get a script, and I do like getting the scripts, but sometimes getting a script is pointless. Because films are very organic as they're being developed. So you might have an assignment, you know, design a monster or character, and then you might be on that character for a couple of weeks, sometimes months, and then next thing you know, character doesn't work and it's fucked. So when it comes to reading scripts, half the time when I'm at Marvel, I will do it, and then the other times I'll have like the head of the project just tell me the story, and that's usually enough because it's a moving target and because things are evolving anyways. Like there have been a couple of times where I've been on top of the scripts and it just didn't really matter. The basic story never changes that much because they're pretty solid over there at Marvel. Like when they get the ball rolling, you know, tertiary things might get adjusted, but the core story is usually constant throughout. Like I remember when I was on Infinity War and Endgame, I started and I got pulled into the office of the head of visual development, which is Ryan Meyer, really insanely super talented guy, and he literally told me the entire story just in one sitting.
Wow.
It was hard for him because I've done a lot of Marvel films, but he's done, you know, he's had his hands in all of them. And so he's describing to me what's going on in this film, in these two films. And not only is it, you know, mind-blowing for me, but it's actually emotional for him because the amount of time that he's invested in, like, designing Captain Americas and Iron Mans and, you know, all of these things. And now, you know, no spoilers, I guess, but you know, we know what happens to Captain America. We know what happens to Iron Man. So he's literally getting choked up, and I'm getting a little choked up too. But that's usually how I get that information. And then at Warner Brothers, my experience with scripts is a little similar. I remember I read all of Shazam when I got it, and it was great, and it stayed great. I don't remember much that changed in that script, but I remember reading the script and being very excited and motivated to jump on. And I've had the opposite experience where I'll be excited to work on a film, and then I read the script, and I've already committed, and I know it's not going to be good, or I know there are a lot of problems, or I know that the fans will not like it, because I've been doing comic book movies for a very long time, and so it's taken people a while, studios, to realize what, you know, audiences really want. So if there's a huge departure from the source material, people will always get upset, especially if they're characters that are like very popular. So yeah, it's kind of a a pro and con to reading a script. Sometimes my idea of what the story will be will serve me as a greater motivation than actually reading the script if the script is
right.
Something that I think will be bad. And it's happened a couple of times. There are a few comic book movies where I'll sit in the theater and my stuff's on the screen and it's not good, and I know that the fans won't like it, and I brought my A game to the job because I didn't read the script, so I was like very relieved. I won't name specific films. But if you go through the IMDb, and be like, I bet he was referring to that one or that one.
Right. I'll actually follow up with something kind of quick. You said it's kind of a back and forth when you're creating these designs, right? So for this guy right here, how much of a back and forth was it? Did you end up, how many designs did you make before you kind of settled on this design?
On that dude, well, that dude specifically. So that's Philosopher Thanos. So once he gets the gauntlet, he doesn't need the armor. So I specifically did Warrior Thanos. I did this guy. I got a hot toy, but I don't want to pull that out. But I did this one's mine.
Right. Okay. Got you.
So Warrior Thanos. Not Warrior. Let's do Philosopher. So Philosopher, I actually did some options, and when you're at Marvel, sometimes they'll just give you an assignment because the heads really like to play to artist strength. So
cool.
Usually when I get a call over at Marvel, they want me to do bad guys and scary stuff. Always, that's me. Which is weird because at Warner Brothers, they'll put me they'll give me Shazam. Or something like that. But at Marvel, bad guys and scary stuff, which I love doing. I'm not complaining. I would say it, but I would do a bad guy any day over a superhero. It's just so much more fun for me. But okay, Philosopher Thanos. So I did a couple of options, and so did multiple artists. So Ryan Meinerding, John Staub, Wes Burt, to name a few, did options for these for Warrior Philosopher Thanos, and they liked some of my stuff. They liked what John Staub was doing, and they liked what Ryan was doing. And so you keep doing passes until it narrows down, and it's like, okay, out of all of these artists, this guy seems to get it. We like a few elements from the other pieces, but this guy now has the job. So so eventually I got whittled out of Philosopher, and then it was between John and Ryan, and then Ryan ended up eventually getting it. And so that's how the process works. When you're at Marvel, if they don't hand you a character, and there were some characters that were just handed to me. There was one. It was the Outriders for Infinity War and Endgame. The things that attack like Wakanda. Right. They were perfectly fine. Jared can handle it. We don't have to throw anyone. But the rest of the Black Order and other characters, including Warrior Thanos, that went through everyone. And when it goes through everyone, it's a bit intimidating because these are literally the best guys in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone is creating quality work. So, on other shows, if I'm on a show with another artist and his ideas might be great, but he can't resolve an image as well as I can, then chances are we'll get the job. But when everybody is good, is acceptable, then it's simply a matter of which person's idea for the character, idea for the aesthetic and look of the character is the most appropriate for the story that they're trying to tell. So it's trying to hit a moving target. So it's a combination of skill and luck. So I ended up getting Warrior Thanos a couple of times.
Nice.
So the first time I got it, there was a bit of a gladiator aesthetic to him. So it was a little rough, not as showy, and we had to showcase his brutality. and the directors really liked that and that option. And so everybody was on this, and they picked mine. And I was very excited about that. It was rough. It was grimy. It was like more of a leather suit with armor, a few armor pieces. And then I modeled the entire thing out, and then it went up the ladder to the head of the department, the head of Marvel, basically, Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige didn't like it, so it got past the directors, and Feige didn't like it. And so, I was riding this wave, and then it just like got pulled out from under.
That could be deflating.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, back to the drawing board, and so I was a little bummed out.
Of course, yeah.
I put all of my eggs in this other basket, and other people were doing designs as well for this version of him, and I decided that I would go more armored, basic, more closely off of the Chitauri look, and just go there, more samurai, more brutal. I came up with a concept for the weapon. Wow. And I just modeled it straight up. No other options, just this, and it got approved. So I got really lucky. They had me refine everything from the waist down because they didn't like what I had done there, and they were right. And so I redesigned that, and then there he is. He's done. And that just that was luck. But yeah, that's how it usually.
That's the business, eh? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I look at the other artists' work, and I think, oh, that could have worked. That could have worked also. And it was everything was just beautifully executed. Mine was just the one that they thought fit best in the story, like that time.
Right. Right.
Wow. Working on so many different films and even games, which challenged you creatively the most?
It's all the same now. It's funny. Games. When I graduated from school, I went to Art Center in Pasadena. It's a very good design school. They don't really. I mean, it's the. I would say it's the best school to prepare you to be a designer. I think that's how it would sum up now. And they've added so many more classes now and are much more current now than I think they were back then. But so I graduated, and I didn't want to do video games because back in 2005 there wasn't enough resolution, there wasn't enough detail, and they always kind of seemed to half-ass the monsters just for the sake of making them work in the engine. So it did not appeal to me. And then the writer's strike happened in I want to say 2006, 2007. And then I spent about a year in games at a company called NCSoft. And even though the characters weren't executed as well as I'd like them to be on screen, the design process was very similar. So you design it ideally, and then whatever they're able to do shows up and starts running around on screen.
Awesome.
But nowadays, I will work on a Gears of War film, and it's exactly. I'm sorry, Gears of War.
You got Nat way too excited. You got him way.
I got way too excited. They're making the film. Oh man.
A game specifically, I've had issues with that recently. And it's the exact same design process. So I will do sketches, and then once everybody's agreed upon the sketch, then I move into 3D. The only exception is that video game has more respect for the 2D process of drawing and painting before moving into 3D. So you can really explore a lot of options, figure out what the design is before jumping into. I use a program called ZBrush. And I start refining the design. In film, I would say the major difference is that the majority of the time that I'm in film, they don't like sketches. And it's a shame because sketching is so necessary for the process. But if you're working with a creative person that just cannot read a drawing and cannot make decisions based off of the limited visual information that they're getting from a drawing, then you have to do everything in 3D, which slows the process down quite a bit. But, it's my job to resolve this problem and to make sure that it's clear to everyone. So to sum up, in video games, I can sketch a lot longer before refining a design in 3D. In film, you just have to get really fast at working in ZBrush, and every concept has to look like a still out of the movie, which is very hard to do.
Wow.
Okay. Well, Jerad, I wanted to ask you, what would be some of your advice for someone who is looking to get into somewhere where you're at career-wise?
It's a great question. Drawing, painting, foundation, first and foremost. I think one of the biggest problems is that in an artist development nowadays, there's so much information out there. I was very limited growing up in the in the 90s. Like I'd go to Barnes and Noble and I'd find a couple of art books, and I was lucky enough to find out at an early age that concept art was a career, and go on that path very aggressively. But it was not a well-known job. Not a lot of people knew about it, and so even growing up, I would tell people exactly what I want to do, and they think I was clueless or going to be broke or something like that. But nowadays, so much information is out there, and I feel a little sorry for people who are starting out because the path is not clear. If you were to go online and if you were just to look up my work, you would see hyper resolved image after image after image after image, and there's no path to that is visible. Now I love posting the drawings and the sketches, but unless you're following artists and reading their interviews and stuff like that, you would have no idea just on the surface that if you were to look at my work that there's 10 years of figure drawing behind that. There's perspective, there's technical drawing, there's I have a BFA from a design school. I've been drawing since I was 5, maybe. I don't know. And so the path isn't that clear. And I don't. There are a lot of good schools out there, but schools and education is a business, and so I have lost faith in certain institutions that I think put students through programs in order to get the most money out of them, as opposed to giving them the most accurate information. But if I were to advise a person who wanted to do what I do for a living, it starts with drawing, and you draw every single day. Some people describe concept art as a job. Some people describe it as a career. In all actuality, it is a lifestyle. So in order to get anywhere, you have to be passionate about it. You have to want to do it every single day. You have to want to draw, paint, sculpt every single day. And I have that compulsion, and the people I work with have that compulsion. So that's the first thing. Drawing every day. Draw what you see. Draw things in perspective. Challenge yourself every day, which not a lot of people do. Like even me, I'll spit out the same couple of creatures when I'm drawing, and I have to get past that before I can do anything exciting. Figure drawing, study anatomy, go to the zoo, draw animals, then move into paint, work with traditional paint. And while you do this today, here's the kick in the pants: is that you still have to keep up with the technology. So you have to become adept in using programs like Photoshop, which is an industry standard. And if you want to do what I do, creature design eventually has to be a 3D thing. So you would have to teach yourself ZBrush. These programs are readily available, though. And if you have an iPad, I'm not 100% convinced. I used to be that you had to work traditionally for a very long time. The technology has gotten so intuitive that you might be able to build a strong foundation on an iPad. You might be able to do it. There's a program called Procreate. I use it. You could take an iPad, to a figure drawing class, and yeah, you could probably build up your foundation there. You could learn how to paint there. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
That's a wealth of advice.
Regardless.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Now, I wanted to ask you, you recently released some concept art for a Batman game that looked pretty awesome. Now, can you give us any details on like which Batman that was? 'Cause it looked to be like Thomas Wayne. No?
It is a canceled game. That is all I can say. How did that come up? Yeah, that one got more attention than I thought it would.
Dude, it looked awesome.
I'm very proud of that work, and that happens a lot. So on IMDb, and it does not compare to the number of projects I've actually worked on because so many things get canceled.
Yeah. There's this saying. I remember I was talking to a movie director. He had directed Den of Thieves, and he had told me, he's like, there's 90% of movies that you think of, they don't even get past the greenlit process. Like that 10% that you see is out of, millions of movies that are trying to get greenlit. Yeah.
Dying to get, basically to the start line. Yeah, there's so many. And I write and direct myself. And the funniest thing, I remember I wrote my first pilot script, and I was so excited, and I had this amazing sense of accomplishment because I did not realize that you're literally just at the start line at that point. Like it's nothing yet. This is the bare minimum. You have to have a good script, a good concept. You have to have a good treatment, and now you can start. So it's very hard. It's very hard. But yeah, tons of projects. There are tons of pitches. Oftentimes, people are so passionate about projects that they want to make into films. They'll contact someone like me to design it and visualize it. Just so that they can, get approved and move on to actually making the film, because there's a series of approvals that have to go through in order to get something actually made. And so, I don't like typically doing pitch art anymore, because if I'm going to invest that amount of time, and it's the exact same amount of time regardless of whether or not the film gets made, you still have to put in the same amount of work to create an exciting image. If no one gets to see it, then that doesn't do anything for me in the long run. So it's a little tricky. If I can avoid doing a pitch, unless it's my own, then I will.
Right. I know you can't say much about this movie as well, but everybody's talking about the Snyder Cut of Justice League. We've all seen the new trailer. I kind of, and you mentioned it in one of your first answers where you said the continuity of DC is a little bit more different than Marvel. And that kind of, it's funny because that kind of turns out into the movies as well, not only in the pre-production and the post-production, but afterwards you kind of see it throughout the continuity of the universes. Where would you say, because Snyder Cut and Justice League in general had a lot of moving parts, what can you tell us about the process of working through that movie and then working through the moving parts as a designer?
Well, it was Christmas, or what I assumed Christmas would be. I haven't celebrated Christmas, but it's every day I got a character that I absolutely loved from my childhood. Like that's what it felt like. And working on Justice League, we started off with several artists. I was working with costume designer Michael Wilkinson. I had worked with him on Batman versus Superman, and it started off as a similar process where we were basically racing to get a bunch of stuff done until the production moved overseas to London, and the design process was going to continue over there. Fortunately, I had done well enough that they decided to take me with them when they went to Leavesden, the Warner Brothers studio lot over there, where they actually did Harry Potter. And so I started off with an amazing team of artists, dear friend of mine, Konstantin Sakiris, Ian Joyner, Kelton Cram, Phil Bate. I think that's everybody.
I like how you're getting your shout outs. I like how you're getting
Yeah, you don't want to slight anyone during these things. The benefits to doing these aren't that great for me because it's a tightrope. So you have to, like, I mention the right people because, you guys contacted me, and I'm one piece in a massive collaborative effort. Stuff I do shows up on screen, but if it doesn't go through all of these other people, it's just a JPEG. That's it. I am responsible for JPEGs, rough models. That's my job. I sit in a dark room all day, drink coffee, and stare at a computer. That's it. It could be a program from a distance. It doesn't really look different. Anyways, so they brought me over to London, the UK, and I was now the only one out from that team to go in and complete characters like Batman, Cyborg, and then a bunch of bad guys, and it was so much fun. I had my hands in almost every character.
Wow.
And bad guy. So it was incredible, and I really enjoy working with Snyder. And I've only talked to him a handful of times actually, because again, just JPEGs, just cranking out JPEGs. So most of my experiences are, of course, working with the costume designer Michael Wilkinson, and he's wonderful. But I mean, I just had to keep cranking stuff out. So I mean, I had one computer at the office, and then I had another computer at home, and I just kept going and going and going. And the story was exactly what I wanted to see. It was the story I always wanted to see. So tackling character after character that I loved, it was a passion project and very fulfilling because I was lucky enough to be the main guy. I think it's safe to say that it was the main guy on that in the concept art phase. Did I answer the question? What was the question?
No, you definitely did.
You definitely did.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch back to like when you're in your element and when you're really like creating your designs. What music do you really listen to when you're in the mood?
It's a great question. No one asked that question. Music is huge. Very good question.
We're really the music podcast.
We're a music podcast. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. When I was on Justice League, I was listening to Death Magic by Health. You familiar?
No.
Health.
I'm bookmarking and have to listen to it later.
Health is insane. They're brilliant. There's a type of music that just kind of jumped off from 9 Inch Nails, and they're like the modern equivalent, and they're genius. And I love everything they do, but I was listening to mainly that over and over and over again because it would help me see the characters moving. And I will often, when I'm working on a show, I will create a playlist. If I have werewolves or big vicious monsters, then I go to I'll probably end up with something like Korn, just like constantly playing Korn, just like all of Korn is a werewolf transformation to me, or just a
wow.
I mean, just the visceral quality of that music, the pain that you can hear is just like, okay, that's great. I get to be brutal, And I was working on like American Horror Story, and they wanted me to do Bloody Face, which I would bounce back images to the owner of I was working through a practical effects house, Christian Tinsley, and I do an image, you give me notes, and we just go back and forth until figured it out. But yeah, Bloody Face was Korn, and then more sophisticated creatures, I'll listen to Lorn, Lorn.
Oh, right, yeah.
You guys don't know this stuff.
No, I think I know Lauren. I think I know Lauren.
Lauren.
The other two I have not listened to. We'll bookmark for later. But Lauren for sure.
Lauren's great. There's a lot of experimental stuff. Sometimes just soundtracks. I'll listen to. It depends on if it's a sophisticated or tragic kind of character, then they're great soundtracks. Lorne is like Lorne is basically like kind of like a sophisticated, somber
right.
9 Inch Nails.
Right.
But I do have range too. Like I've been nowadays, like I'm just sketching a bunch of aliens right now, and I need speed and I need pace. So a lot of Eminem, Jay-Z. Just, that gets me going. I'm all over the place music wise. I just got into Logic. Like
nice. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice one.
Yeah, I'm all across the board. I'm trying to think.
Coop's a big fan of Logic. Coops.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I literally just now I was like, because he shows up. He's referenced a bunch of times with. Is it Bad Meets Evil or D12?
Yeah. Bad Meets Evil.
Come in from time to time, and I keep saying Logic. I was like, who the hell is that? And then I click on it. And oh, everything's brilliant. And I love rap. I got into that. I got into that way too late. I think I was too angsty, and so in the '90s, it was all like, Nirvana. We had Korn, and 9 Inch Nails, Tool. Love Tool.
Nice.
Yeah, there's so much music, and then occasionally just like '80s rock.
Yeah,
of course.
That's cool, man. You look at a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, you do have a short film that's coming up, and you're taking on the mantle of a writer, director, producer, and designer for this film. So how was that experience, and what made you want to make this short film?
I have a laundry list of projects in development. I love this job. I love being a concept artist. I love designing for films, but it was never the original goal. I got this job, and I got into concept art for 2 reasons. One, I was designing my own things from short stories that I was writing as a child. So I had a portfolio filled with my own characters. There was never any fan art, and I honestly never got to draw Batman until someone actually paid me to draw Batman, because I always just wanted to do my own thing, regardless of like Batman had a profound effect on me. The Batman animated series, like he's my absolute favorite.
Great show.
Character. Yeah. Oh my God! It was a time when adults were not taking the intelligence of children for granted. Like that was a drama. That was a serious show. You listen to, you watch any of those, and my God, they were taking us seriously, and I admired that. But anyways, yeah, I love the job. But originally, I was just designing my own stuff. I ended up showing my portfolio to get concept art work, and then it just kind of spiraled. And I love this thing. It is a distraction though from doing my own thing, and I did start to become ambitious as a concept artist. But writing and directing was always my greatest passion. The other thing that deterred me from doing it was actually not realizing that I was dyslexic going through school. Oh, wow. So I loved writing. I loved all of it, and they would actually put me in these advanced English classes, and it became apparent that I was different when the teachers would get lazy and just have us read during the day. I'd be in class, not knowing, like I didn't figure it out until I was an adult. I would absorb the information. They would give us, all the old, obvious things like Chaucer and Shakespeare and all of that, and really, really fun stuff to read. But as I'm in class and I'm staring at this book, I can hear people just flipping pages so much faster than me. Like it's like reading a chapter. And so I think I got like 3 or 4 pages in, absorbed of this chapter. Everybody's done, and the teacher decides to wake up from his hangover and start teaching the class. And I'm just lost, and so that really, I was like, oh, maybe I'm off, maybe I'm dumb, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so there were a few instances like that, and I just decided to bury myself in drawing and painting, because that's where I got the greatest emotional reward. So it took me a while to get back to it, actually. But writing is incredibly fulfilling and much more challenging than concept art. And directing, it served a couple of purposes, actually. One, I have a bunch of properties that I'm putting out there, and I haven't directed anything. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a side job, and I'm going to take the money from that side job, and I'm going to direct my own film. And I wrote something that I thought was very manageable and not ambitious. And then through the process of shooting it, finding a location, not being able to use a location, having to build a set, getting actors, everything, it was not easy. Yep. And in the process, not only did I find it incredibly fulfilling and challenging, which I have not felt that in a long time, I also became aware of what directors go through every day, because I cannot describe the frustration of being a designer on a show, having a very important question that goes unanswered, and not knowing, like, how hard is it? Like, who is the character? What would he wear? What does this monster do? How does this monster attack? If I know how the monster attacks, if I know how it fights, then I know what box I'm working in, and I don't always get those answers. And as a director, you're watching and adjusting the film in your head over and over again, and trying to get all of these pieces to work and delegate to all of these people while trying to satisfy the studio, which I didn't have to worry about. I was paying for everything. So directing was an incredible experience, and ironically actually made me a better concept artist in terms of working with directors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were a big fan of Batman, and it had a huge impact on you when you were growing up. So I'll ask you this. I'm also a massive Batman fan. Rank your favorite Batman costumes. I'm sure you have a bunch, and I'm sure you've seen the new Batman trailer. So where would you put that in your rankings?
Okay. Well, my favorite Batman character and interpretation was actually The Dark Knight Returns. So doing Batman v Superman was nuts.
Right.
It was a very surreal experience. So that is one of my favorites. And it's not necessarily, I mean, I love the size of him. I love his brutality, and I love it's essentially his epilogue. And of course they ended up doing two more, so it's not quite his epilogue. Right. But to know where that story ends was phenomenal, and had such an influence on how he was currently written. So that changed Batman. So I'm not positive how much of the suit I love versus how much of the story. I don't think they're necessarily separate, because I've had experiences where I've designed things that I've wanted to pat myself on the back for, and they're not in good stories, and so they don't land. So as I've mentioned before, just being a piece of the puzzle that makes a film, that's a clear example of, like, no matter how good what I do is, if it's a crap story, no one's going to care. Like, it just doesn't matter. But that was probably one of my favorite. I'm trying to think. I love the Batman Beyond suit. I love it. Okay.
I wish they end up making a movie at some point.
It's inevitable. It'll happen, I'm sure. Like, I've heard that it off and on that it's in development, just not while on Warner's lot, just following like comic book movie or Screen Rant or something like that. Yeah. And there's always these little rumblings, and people do want to do it, and everybody wants to see that film. And it's so weird too, because it's another example of the animated series. Bruce Timm affecting the canon. Right. Like Paul Dini comes up with Harley Quinn, and next thing you know, like, she's gigantic. Right. And we got to see that in our lifetime. Like, how many iconic Batman characters did we actually get to see grow up in front of us? Like, not many. I think it might have just been Harley, if I'm
probably
correct.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, there were a couple of iterations of Batman that were interesting, but they were super strange. Like, I never liked the Azrael. costume. I thought that was a little bit too much of an electric guitar solo, unnecessary. I'm trying to think. In the comics, there are a few suits that I do like, and I'm trying to think. But Batman's been drawn so differently. Like I remember when they put the yellow back around the emblem in New 52, not being crazy about that, but then it kind of grew on me. It's very hard to go wrong with a bat suit because it's there's a lot of black, there's a cape and a cowl, and
right.
Are you really going to screw it up? And there's some that I absolutely don't like, from the films, but for the most part, there's some cool stuff. I don't always agree with the choices that I see, but the thing that I notice that I've become annoyed by is that people are so quick to trash things that they see in trailers, and they just don't know how it fits in the story. So even like, let's say the current suit, which I do like, and I do have, I think I have information that other people don't have on that, and so I see. Maybe, I don't know. It could be on a comic book movie right now. I can't keep up. But based on what I do know, seems like there are a lot of great choices in that design. And there are a lot of rumors. I'm probably, because right now I do not know. I cannot differentiate between what I've read online and what I've heard. That's probably as far as I'm going to go on that.
Fair enough.
I didn't work on that one, so it would be a mystery to me, which is actually kind of nice. I mean, I was a little bummed out, but at the same time, now there's going to be a Batman film that I actually get to enjoy as in the audience, and I haven't had that in a while. I haven't had that in a couple of years, so it'll be cool to actually see a movie and not know what's about to happen. Because when I see films that I work on, it's not a matter of what's going to happen next. It's a matter of I wonder how well they're going to execute what happens next.
Now you're watching as a fan.
Yeah, so that'll be cool.
Cool. You've worked on a lot of important films, a lot of culturally important ones, but I'd say one of the most important ones was definitely Black Panther. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with the heartbreaking passing of Chadwick Boseman, it gives everyone the time to reflect on that. When you look at Black Panther and Boseman's impact, how crucial was the future of superheroes? How crucial was that to the future of superheroes?
The future of superheroes?
Yeah. Like him playing that role and the cultural impact, like how important was that to the future of like superheroes and what we would potentially see going forward?
I guess like setting a precedent for how it
that works. Yeah. Well, I think that. Let's touch on that. I think in film, and I underestimated because of my own ignorance. The incredible importance of representation and what this means to a new generation. There were a couple of like breakthrough moments that I've had where I was ignorant, and then I saw a film, and suddenly or a TV show, and these things that just because I didn't have to deal with these things daily because they just didn't necessarily apply to me, that I just became aware of horrible things that were happening in society. But Black Panther, it's amazing. Films are catching up to the comics. Like we covered this. If everybody read comics as much as they see films, yeah, we got it. But yeah, Black Panther was a massive deal, and to be involved in my limited capacity was awesome. When I see the impact that the film has had on people, it's absolutely wonderful. Now I was on it. I was on the Black Panther suits both times in a limited capacity. So the first time I was working on a Black Panther suit was for Civil War, and I was actually spending the majority of my time on Doctor Strange. And when there was some downtime, they wanted me to do a pass on the Black Panther suit. So I threw in some options, but that suit was done by Ryan Meinerding. And then in Black Panther, I actually ended up working on that suit also and doing some options because shooting-wise, he shows up in Endgame and Infinity War before they started shooting Black Panther. So technically, I worked on Black Panther, but yeah, I don't want to take credit from people who deserve it much more than me. As for his passing, it was very. It did not feel real at all because I would have expected to know something about it, but I did not. But yeah, I think Marvel really touched on representation. And they really hit that right. They got the right guy to do the job. Like I can't think of anyone else being Black Panther. Like I don't know how you do that.
Gonna be tough to replace.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I know that Marvel is coming out with a much more a couple of more properties that involve superheroes of different races and ethnicities and genders, and that's always been Marvel's strength.
Right, definitely.
Like they've always, they've been much more ahead of the game there than I think DC has in terms of like creating a more complete world and in a way more accurate because there are more people of different races in the canon. It's a very intense thing. I mean, just working on that as briefly as I did, you could feel the gravity and the importance of it. Even when I was briefly on Civil War. I'm very curious to see what they do with it now. I think that there are a lot of cool places that they can still go. They've built a big enough stable world to further do stories that revolve around Wakanda. It's an integral part of the MCU. So what Bosom did at the very least laid the groundwork for continuing to tell those great stories.
100%.
Awesome. Just before we go, I just want to ask you, what's next for you? Like, what projects are you working on? And what can we expect?
What can you say you're working on as well?
What can you say? Let the listeners know what you're saying and potentially working on, then we can know.
I worked on projects that were announced, so I spent some time on Sanchi and Black Panther. Not Black Panther. What was I saying? Sanchi and Eternals.
Oh, cool.
And Doctor Strange and a few other Marvel things.
Awesome.
Okay. All right.
And I'm working on a video game and TV shows.
A lot of things, just to say the least.
There's still a lot of cool things to be revealed for Snyder's Justice League, and I'm really excited to see that.
As are we, good sir. As are we.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm working 12 to 18 hours a day cranking out stuff. So it's there'll be more things in the future. There's definitely a lot. I think now we're actually experiencing a bit of a spike. So I got a lot of calls just this week for a bunch of amazing, comic book properties that are starting to, at the very least, develop, which means they're anticipating being able to shoot in the relatively near future. So that's good. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Cool. Well, Jerad, thank you for taking time away from your super busy schedule to come sit down with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it was very, very fun, easy little chat.
Yeah. Awesome. Until next time, it's the Boys from the No Good Podcast.
Take care.
Take care. Okay.
Thanks for watching the video. If you would like to watch more videos like this, subscribe to our Lingo News channel. Also, if you're interested in sports, we have a Lingo Sports channel that you can check out as well. Take care, everybody.